Hi, my name is Courtney Terry, and this is Arts Alive. My guests today are Val Blaha and Charity Livingston, and they are here from Gallery Theater to talk about a really exciting workshop opportunity that's happening on Saturday the 23rd. And you are both here because there are two sessions, two workshops, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And it sounds so exciting. So Charity, you're doing a playwriting workshop, and then Val will follow up with like a songwriting 101. And tell me more about it. So where did you both have been involved with the theater for a very long time. So I guess a little bit like, tell us how long you've been involved in the theater.
Okay. So I started at Gallery years ago because I had a child who loved theater, and as often happens in community theater, the kid goes and the parent follows. But I do have a background in theater, so I was pretty excited about my then 6-year-old deciding she wanted to be in Miracle on 34th Street.
Okay.
That would have been 9 years ago. And since then, I've just volunteered, stayed connected, but now I'm on the board. I'm the president-elect. I'll take over the presidency in January.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then Val,
I've been involved. I think maybe first just watching friends in plays, and then my son did the kids camp when he was young, so that kind of drew me in. And then I was in Sorted Lives back in, I believe that was in 2018, early 2018, and that was just an amazing experience. And so I've been kind of involved ever since in the Readers Theater group and just kind of volunteering here and there wherever I can.
Wonderful. Well, and Gallery is just such an amazing organization in our community too, because there's just so many people that are involved or have like the same kind of passing, like somebody that was in a play or you did volunteered. And these workshops are a relatively new thing that the theater has been offering. And so what...
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about that.
Please.
Yeah, I mean, the purpose of the workshops has been really just to tie into some of the amazing resources in our community and to give people an opportunity to explore things. So we've had ones about acting, about being behind the scenes, such as stage managing or in the tech booth. But this one specifically is about playwriting because, I write for a living. I'm a ghostwriter. I primarily write nonfiction, but I've also written a number of plays. And Val is a community resource who's been in, over 20 years in the music profession and then written a play recently herself, a musical where she wrote the music. So we just thought we might also enjoy tapping into our community, seeing who else is interested in developing their own scripts, maybe even workshopping them, whatever they're interested in. We have this great resource here available to people.
Yeah, and the workshops are free, so it's really so accessible for anyone. Is there a particular age limit, or is it anybody?
We've had it really open.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I know my own teenager is planning to come.
Cool.
She loves to write, and she's excited to do some of the hands-on exercises that we will have be part of it. And I've heard from somebody that's in her 80s that plans to attend. So
Yay.
I think the door is just wide open for anyone who wants to write, specifically, I think, for film or for the stage. We're going to focus more on stage. But since we've worked in those areas, I think we can offer a lot of insight depending on what people want to do.
Yeah, well, and I feel like you're right. Playwriting is such kind of a specific, and I feel like even in the schools and things like that, like the kids, they write and people find themselves, but the very specific, I feel like there's so much more that you have to take into account when you're writing a play compared to if you were just doing fiction or poetry or something, which isn't to say those other writing styles aren't any less. I don't want to start any writing beefs.
That too.
Yeah.
But it's like anything else. It's technical, so there are things that apply just to that area for sure. Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of daunting too. It's funny since I've been mentioning to people like, it comes up in conversation that I've written a play, and people are like, oh my god, like it seems like this really big overwhelming thing. And in my daily work where I teach music, I'm always like breaking things down so that people get over that kind of initial initial fear of like, oh, I can't do this. It's just too big of a thing to even, start it. So what I really like to do is like, okay, well, how, to break it down, little bit by little bit, and then you build this, you build the character, you build the story, you build the songs, and that's how you create. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like songwriting is also, there's, does someone need to have, I imagine they would want a little bit of musical experience if they were interested in songwriting, but, is there kind of a level, or is it really anybody that has an interest in?
Yeah, no, it's really anybody. The first part of mine is going to be about kind of building a relatable character. So we're going to, because I think really in order for an audience to get drawn into a play, you have to have characters that they feel compassion and empathy for. And so in order for that to happen, the writer really needs to know their character and understand who this person is. And in writing my play, I feel like the characters could walk into a restaurant or like be in the middle of a conversation. I would know exactly what they would say and what they would feel, and so because I dove that deep. So the first part will be that, and then the second part will be kind of like the main character's main song, like how do you go about writing that? But we're going to kind of probably listen to a few songs, like main songs from musicals, and kind of talk about that, and then just do kind of like a very basic, what are the steps to writing it? So people don't really have to come in with a lot of prior knowledge or even musical experience or anything.
Just the interest and the passion.
I think everybody would get something out of it.
Well, and Val and I have both been educators, so we are both familiar with the process of breaking something down into the pieces that are doable and then building on those steps to get the finished product. So
exactly.
I think we're going to make it approachable for whomever's there, or we might even have the next Lin-Manuel Miranda in our community.
Very cool.
Just waiting to come to a workshop and figure out what they want to do. So it could go any way it goes.
Well, and I love that idea of kind of also just breaking it down and making it into those more kind of bite-sized chunks, because I agree, it can seem, I know exactly what you were describing.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's such a fun exercise for people too, the idea of musicals and how I feel like a lot of songs have stories in them, but especially with musicals, like that's the whole point.
Yeah.
And how much music connects back to the characters and their goals.
Right. And music has a specific function in the musical. It's to, bring the story forward, bring the character forward. It's not, there in certain types of musicals maybe it just kind of gets dropped in there, but usually there's a purpose, and it's leading the story to somewhere. So we'll kind of talk about that and how to write specifically for that, as opposed to just say, just a pure, I love song or something.
Yes. I just learned about the concept of the I Want song that a main character will do, which, the one that everyone is like, the Frozen, and pretty much every Disney musical movie has a song like that in it, but now it's I could see somebody, when you kind of learn about these things and then can identify them, that just becomes more inspiring when you're like, oh, that's how they did it. It's almost like I feel like with playwriting and songwriting, it's like a secret language in a way of you start to, normal boring life, you're like, oh, that's a really good that, and that's a really good that. Charity, do you have a specific, type of play in mind? Or are you going to cover all the bases? Or
I have, 12 plays I've written from children's to adults, I've only written the libretto, which is like the words for music. We're collaborated with musicians on the musical part. So I'm really flexible, having done such a weird variety of things. I'm going to see who comes and what they're interested in, and also what stage in development they are. Are they still exploring the idea? In which case we'll definitely get into fleshing that out, crafting the story. She's going to get into the character development. But if they've already got something that they've written and they just really want to know, how do I make this the next level? Or I think I finished this. How do I get it performed? How do I get anyone to read this?
Yeah.
I can get into that part with people as well. I wrote down this little funny quote for me about Pablo Picasso, because he says, Picasso says that when art critics get together, they talk about content, style, trend, and meaning. But when painters get together, they talk about where you can get the best turpentine. And I think that's true. When you get writers together who actually write for a living, we're kind of into the turpentine of it. We know where you are in the process by what you describe and what that means you need to do to get it to a professional level. And so I think that's part of what we want to help people with, wherever they are in that journey. from just the idea or even the desire stage
Yeah.
to a product that can be put in front of an audience. So there's a lot of steps in between.
Yes.
But they are all just steps.
And finding that help and encouragement for each of those processes just helps that person want to continue more. And I would absolutely, like at the library, sometimes we get questions from writers about like, how can I get my work published, or where? And it's both seems really super complicated, but also surprisingly easy just with technology and how there's online submissions for everything. But it really, honestly, having somebody that knows what they're talking about that can say, well, these are steps that you can try. Right. It sounds like such a practical workshop. I love that people will be leaving with like, yeah.
I do think we want to keep it practical. I think we have exercises in mind, but we will also see what people are bringing in terms of their own interests.
Yeah.
And then, I do hope people leave inspired to write if they're not writing yet, and write more if they're already writing, and get their work out there if they've already written. Because I just think our world needs more creatives.
Yes, 100%.
Oh, yeah. 1,000%.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be Saturday the 23rd, and then so the playwriting workshop starts at
10 to noon is my segment, and we will take a lunch break. People can bring a sack lunch or get something on 3rd Street. And then Val will start
at 1 o'clock.
1 to 3. 1 to 3.
1 to 3. Uh-huh. And it's would you like people to register by contacting the theater, or it's also maybe both? You can just show up.
You can just show up.
Yeah, you can just show up, and we hope people do. We would love to have, full house for it. So
yeah, well, I think this is so great that Gallery is doing this, because I feel like there is a little bit of an empty space in our community right now, and the resources that we have, and the theater is the perfect place to share those resources.
Well, and like you said, this is new.
Yes.
So it's sort of a pilot.
Yeah.
And if we have a good turnout, that tells us our community is interested in doing more of this sort of thing. And so then we'll be able to keep creating those experiences. But if it's not an interest, it's not an interest. I just have a feeling it will be.
Yes. I think I would assume so. Like you said, McMinnville is a really creative community.
For sure.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you both for coming in today and talking about the program. And I can't wait. Hope you get a lot of folks in on September 23rd.
Thank you.
Thanks,
yeah, thank you. This is Courtney Terry, and it's been Arts Alive.